Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Ian Mann. I will be the chair today. Joining me via Zoom are panel members Harvey Diamond and Lynn Nesbitt. The assessment department personnel via Zoom as well as Roddy Fontania, and joining me today is Valen Rojo as the administrative personnel and our trainee Axel. Sorry, I didn't get your last name. Iradua. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment role in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today, and the session will close after all of the applications have been heard. The board will then deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items 1, 2, 5, and 7 on our docket today. Ms. Rojo, would you please affirm the assessors and the applicant's testimony?
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Rodrigo Pontanilla.
And you affirm the evidence you're about to present at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Tim Brawati.
And you affirm the evidence you're about to present at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
The first matter we will be hearing today is the property at 135 McGregor Street. I note that there is a preliminary matter on this with respect to the burden of proof for non-cooperation. Mr. Pontanilla, would you lead off, please, with your report, and then we will look at the burden of proof. Perhaps you can just introduce it, and then we'll deal with the burden of proof aspect.
Okay, no problem. So up next, we have file 23-233. The roll number is 14002316000. The civic address is 135 McGregor Street. The 2024 assessed value has gone out at $629,000. And as previously mentioned, we do have a preliminary issue to deal with, and the issue of non-cooperation. So if you scroll down to page, I believe it's page 13 of my brief. What you should see in front of you is an official document from the department, which was acknowledging that the appellant had requested for an extension for the income and expense mailer information to be submitted to us. So you can see there that the original date was May 7, 2021, when they reached out to us, that they weren't able to return the information on time as dictated by legislation. And we had agreed to provide an extension up until June 30th, 2021. And then on the following page, on page 14, we have the extension letter. We have the email that acknowledges that there was an extension letter provided. and that the June 30th, 2021 date is the last day that they can mail it in, or that they can submit it to us. And then on page 15, following that on page 15 and taking us to page 16 is the 311 request that the appellant had put forward to ask for an extension to provide us with that information. And then from there, if you look on page 17, we have the cover letter of the income and expense mailer request that would have been issued to the appellant. And then taking us down to the end of the brief is the copies of the income and expense mailer documents that we would have sent to them. And that's my presentation on that.
Thank you, Mr. Broad. Have you any questions with respect to that issue alone for Mr. Pontonia?
I suppose my questions would be, is he aware that the owner purchased the property in 2021?
I am aware that there's a sale on the property.
And so if the client purchased the building in 2021, information on income and expenses prior to that would be difficult for the owner to have.
It may have been.
And lastly, my last question would be, is he aware that the owner has submitted the most recent financial information that the city has requested for the next assessment period?
I am aware. That's correct.
Okay, those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Diamond, have you any questions of Mr. Pontonia with respect to the to this issue?
Yeah, Mr. Pontonia, I guess my question is, in instances where a building is just purchased like this, and the information from a previous owner might not be readily available, are there any provisions where the city will forego the requirement of submitting the information when it's not available in those instances?
Not that I'm aware of. From my understanding, if they don't have the information, they can still return the income and expense mailer and simply list that they don't have it. That way we're aware that they just don't have the information and we don't have to pursue the non-compliance. But if we receive no contacts whatsoever from the appellant, we have no other options, since we are dictated by legislation to then pursue the non-compliance.
Okay, so the next question I have is, other than asking for, did you hear anything other from the applicant other than requesting an extension of time?
That I'm not aware of. I just have the documents that I have in the brief.
Okay, so you don't know if there's any other communication than after the extension was in fact granted?
I'm aware that the extension was granted, and then from there, we never received any mailer or any income or expense information back from the appellant.
And that was the question I had. Was there any other communication after that?
Well, once we have our final communication where we let them know that we need it, there is no more communication. We've already acknowledged that we needed to receive the information, and then we acknowledged an extension on that. So there's no.
Yeah, the question I asked you was, if there was any other return from the applicant after perhaps indicating that they couldn't provide information because they didn't have it. In which case, the city would have said, "Well,
we have no
information
on that.
You can't answer." You know, that's my question.
Yeah. No, I understand what you're telling me. We never received any documents returned from the request. I do acknowledge that we did receive the 2022 income and expense mailer, so I'd like to acknowledge that. So there's no issue with that there. This is just for the year that they have. So there was a sale. I can see that there was a sale. I'll leave that up to the board to decide, but we received nothing back, so I'm bound by legislation to have to pursue the non-compliance.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Nesbitt, any questions?
I do, and it's a follow-up from Mr. Diamond's questions. Mr. Pontonia, you indicated that the appellant or the property owner could have sent in the income and expense mailer and just simply noted that he didn't have it because he just purchased the property. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, you can, whenever we request for the information, if the information isn't available, the property owners are within their ability to just simply let us know that they don't have access to that information or anything to that extent. And at least we received something back just to let us know.
Okay.
So they can always reach out with that.
Okay. So then this 311 request that came in, didn't the owner in effect do that? He said he was a brand new owner and didn't have the information.
Yeah, but that under legislation, we need to receive the mailer back. There's a process in place. So we have to send a request and they have to send us the mailer back with, they can even write it on directly onto the mailer. It doesn't matter, but we need to receive something back in an appropriate form. So that wasn't, that I wouldn't consider that to be the same. What they have there is that they let us know that they don't have the information and that they needed more time to get the information. And I'm sympathetic to that, but that's not the same. What they asked for is simply a request to then send in the information, and we granted the request until June 30th, 2021. So I don't really think that's a fair apples to apples comparison. There was no, I mean, yeah, there's a sale. They, you know, they did acknowledge that, so they acknowledged that they had just purchased the property in February and that they would like an extension for 1 year. We don't give extensions for a year. So then the department reached out and let them know that we would give them the furthest extension that we could, which was June 30th, 2021, for them to submit their information. They have to submit something. That's the crux of the matter, is that they need to submit something back.
Okay, so the department then, in this instance, because there was no information, the department knew there was no information. And I'm assuming then the department did not contact the owner to say, we appreciate there's no information, just send it in and write on it, no information available, I just bought the property.
As far as I'm aware, there is no requirement for us to do that. So I don't see how that would have happened.
No, I know there's no requirement. I was just thinking about kind of the communication side. That's
sure.
all.
Well, we have
Thank you.
thousands. We have thousands of properties in our portfolio, so following every single one up like that would be extremely difficult.
Thank you, Mr. Pontonia.
Thank you. And I have no questions for Mr. Pontonia. Mr. Broad, can you do you have a submission to make with respect to this issue?
All I would add is, yeah, obviously it's a new owner, just gets possession of this building. 60 days later or so, they're getting a mailer asking for this information. They clearly don't have it. They contacted the city. Was it the right method that they contacted the city? No, they didn't follow up and write on a piece of paper that they didn't have the information. They called the city and made that information available to them. So obviously they didn't do that in the proper method, but given the brand new ownership of the building, I think that's a reasonable misstep to understand. And again, as the assessor has stated, they've submitted the new information that they had available for the next assessment period. So this isn't an ongoing issue or anything. And so again, we'll talk about the value later, but the owner's already being penalized here in terms of the assessed value and having to go through this process in the application here. So I think to double hit them on this non-compliance as well would be really punitive to the owner.
Thank you. Mr. Pontonia, any questions?
No, I have no questions.
Mr. Diamond?
No, I don't have any questions either. Thank you.
Ms. Nesbitt?
I have no questions. Thank you.
And I have no questions. So what we'll do is take a short recess. We'll go in camera and discuss the application of the non-compliance and let you know our decision very shortly. After consideration, the application by the city to pursuant to section 53 sub 3 of the Municipal Assessment Act to shift the burden of proof is denied. So Mr. Pontonia, the burden of course remains with you, and if you will continue with your presentation, please.
Sure. So as mentioned, we had the assessed value at $629,000. So we have this building as labeled as a CMRST, commercial retail store. We have 2 stories on it. We have an actual year built of 1954, an effective year built of 1970. And we have a gross total leasable area of 4,820 square feet. So if you look on page 2, you'll see the image of the subject property from the pad eye view map showing its relation to the neighborhood. And then on page 3, I have included an overhead pictometry image of the subject property. On page 4, we have a north-facing view and a west-facing view of the subject property. And then on page 5, we have the Google Street View images of the subject property. And so we can see that it's used as a medical building. I believe we have, from my understanding, there's a dentistry, that I believe is on the main floor. And then we have a walk-in clinic and a physiotherapy on the second floor. So we went over the request for income and expense information, so we don't need to go over that again. As previously mentioned, there is a sale on the subject, a recent sale from February 9th, 2021. So that's right before the economic reference period of April 1st, 2021. And we do have a $500,000 as the sale price that was on the subject. On page 8, I do have some comparable information that I have there from some rent comparables. So they are from within the neighborhood, and they do range from $11 on the lower end to $18 on the higher end. And I do have a recommendation to make on the file. So I just wanted to get us to this point so we could be oriented with the subject property. So if we look at the original valuation, we do have the 3 premises as previously mentioned. We have 2,470 square feet at $14.32 per square foot. We do have a 1,400 square foot premise at $12.47 per square foot. And we have a 950 square foot premise at $12.81 a square foot. So the total there is 4,820 square feet. And if we look at the price per square foot as a whole, as one economic unit, we have a price per square foot of $13.49. From there, we have applied the model parameters of a 6% vacancy, 3% expense, and a $7 shortfall per square foot, which brings us to the net operating income of $57,241. And this is where I made my adjustment after reviewing the market evidence that I had. I was able to increase the cap rate from the modeled 9.1% to a 10% cap rate. And by increasing the cap rate, it does bring the value down to a revised assessment of $572,000.
Thank you, Mr. Moratti. Is that recommendation something that you were aware of?
It's not something I'm aware of, and I would still argue that that value is not correct.
Okay, thank you. Then, Mr. Pontinia, please continue.
Sure. So following that on page 10, it was an income value summary of what we had just gone over, although I did have a recommendation on the value. And then on page 11, we do have our cap rate information. So we do have a sample of different cap rates that we have for the retail portfolio. On page 12, we do have Municipal Assessment Act excerpts, some of the more relevant ones. And then on page 13, and taking us to the end of my brief, is the information in regards to the income and expense mailer. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moratti, any questions?
I think just 2 quick questions. I'm just wondering if Mr. Pentanilla has had a chance to go inside and see this property.
I have not had a chance to inspect it.
And with the sale price in February of 2021, would he think that would be a good indication of value for the property in early 2021?
Well, the sale price would have been right around the economic reference period, so I do think it's a good price. We do take a mass appraisal approach when we do have our initial review of properties. So we do take many factors into consideration, and that definitely would be one of them.
That's it for me.
Ms. Nesbitt, any questions?
Thank you very much. Mr. Pontinia, in addition to the sale, what other factors do you take into consideration?
So we do look at overall market rents to see where the rents are applied. We do look at the neighborhood. We do look at what the model's given. There's many factors that I look over when I do my review. And so taking into consideration the $13.49 that we had, I thought the overall price per square foot was very reasonable, very within line with the market data information that I had. Even the cap rate of 9.1%, given the neighborhood, that to me doesn't seem like an unreasonable cap rate, but because we did have a sale on it, I did take a little look into it more, and that seemed to be the one area that I was able to make an adjustment on to try to bring it closer to what the sale was. But we never rest our hats on one sale when it comes to a mass appraisal perspective. We use all the different factors that we have to give us our assessed values.
Okay, and these rent comparables, what types of premises are they?
So just give me 1 second here. Just close that window. So these are all, there's a mix. The top ones are So the first one would be a retail, like a wellness store, I guess. The second one would be a chiropractor. I believe the third one is third and fourth one are sort of retail, and then the fifth, sixth, and seventh are all medical use comparables.
Okay, when you say medical use comparables,
Like office,
you mean like a,
like an office
pardon me?
comparable, yeah, like a dental. The top
Okay.
284 Salters Dental. 2110 Main Street is a hearing center, and 1750 is an X-ray clinic. The issue with the subject property that I found is that I wanted to give a little bit of both for market data, because although it is a retail building, it is being used as a medical in a medical use, and so I wanted to show a little bit of lease information from both, just to get a better idea of the market leases that are going for these sort of buildings. It's not going to be exactly the same, but it's just to get an idea of the market evidence.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Pontinia.
Mr. Diamond, any questions?
Yeah, so Mr. Pontinia, you indicated that the city uses a mass appraisal approach, but in the fact that this building did sell
Yep.
for $500,000 just before,
Yep.
appears to be arm's length, doesn't it?
If you just give me 1 second, I took a look at that sale, and the sale does. Yep, the sale does appear to be arm's length.
So that would give a better indication of the value than mass appraisal would, wouldn't it? Because it does appraise this individual building that sold at fair market value, it would appear, if it was sold at arm's length.
If it was, yep, if that's the case, then that definitely would be a good indicator of market value. I don't disagree with that, but again, I have my marching orders for how we do things here, and we have to sort of work with the model we have to try to see if we can make it work. Adjusting the rents to try to get it to that sale price doesn't make sense. It would put it below market, so we can't do that. I'm not going to give it an 11% cap rate to try to get it down there, because that also is completely without of the range of acceptable cap rates. So we do have an approach to the way we do things, and I don't disagree that that's an indicator of market value. If the board feels as well, then they can make the decision. But I thought the 572 overall, that's also an indicator as well, right? Like, we do have the sale, but we never rest our hats on one value. There's always many inputs to value, so it's just about an overall approach to the value of the subject.
Okay, well, I'm looking at your rents right now, and I got to tell you, I don't think the 9.1% cap seems unreasonable, but the rents do. I'm looking at the rents, and I guess most of them are in much nicer areas. We're talking about a property that is in the core of core areas on Flora and McGregor.
Yep.
Would you agree?
Yeah, it's definitely in a little bit of a more challenged neighborhood, but
okay, well, that's good because you agree. And I'm looking at your comparables, and I think the best comparable would be the property at 284 Salters Street, which I think is the dental clinic on Redwood and Main. Okay. And the reason I know that is because in previous hearings, the city has used that rent quite often.
Sure.
And that's the one floor. And I'd say it's a pretty comparable neighborhood. Redwood, and Salters is pretty core area as well. And that is going at 1120 a square foot, and it's all on one floor. There's no second floor. So
yep.
Would you think that maybe the rents are a little bit high in your model here?
Well, let's see here. Just give me 1 second. Well, because we didn't have a 2020 mailer, I wasn't able to use that as a snapshot. I was able to look at a previous mailer that would have fallen in the year before, but again, it wasn't a 2020 mailer, so I wasn't able to sort of use that as a hard indicator. But when I took a look at that, when they were declaring what their total income received, I took a look, and it looked like we had leases. Yeah, we did have some leases that might have been, I guess, a little bit below that. I mean, that's the market data that I had. It's what I looked at. If you guys, again, if the board feels a little bit different, they're within their opinion to do that. This is just the information that I had in the analysis that I had on the subject. I thought 1348 overall wasn't a bad rate. And I understand that the board does typically like to have market data that would be within the neighborhood. But if you look at the subject is partially owner occupied. If you look at the neighborhood, the majority of the buildings that are going to be of comparable use, they are used in an owner occupied manner. And because of that reason, it's not good indicators of reliable market data because we use net rents for market data. So from that perspective, I always have to widen the net of comparables that I use, simply because of the reason that we don't have good reliable market data from within directly next to the subject.
Okay, thank you.
It's not possible to do that. That's what I really want that to be known, that there's no ability to do that when they're all owner occupied. I have to go with what I have.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Pontonia, I have only a question with respect to the parking. I see in the property description you have outdoor parking 0, yet the overlay at page 2 and the pictures on page 3 and 4
Yep.
look as though there's at least 5 stalls there. Is that part of this property, or is that an adjacent property?
So if we look at the picture within the on page 3 of my pictometry, you'll see the border of the parcel.
Right.
And if we look at the bordering of the parcel, it does look like those parking spaces are within the parcel. My only understanding of that would be that when we typically put parking spaces, it's because we are valuing the parking spaces. So in other words, they're renting them out and they're receiving an income on them, and then so we put a value on them to give us an idea of the value that's being added to the overall subject property. In this case, there's no indication that they're renting out or leasing any of those parking spaces. So it's typically just throw, and it's used along with its value just along with the subject property itself.
Okay, thank you. That was the only inquiry I had. Mr. Broaddy, your presentation, please.
Thank you. I'm going to be pretty short and sweet on this one. This is a 2-story walk-up property. So again, in terms of some of the rental rates that were used by the city in the assessment, do believe that given the walk-up nature, that over $12 a square foot rent is pretty aggressive. But again, the question, it's always a tough question to figure out what a building is worth on a specific date. But in this case, we have a sale in February of 2021, less than 60 days before. This is a legitimate sale. I've submitted 2 pieces of evidence. One, just the sales information, which the city has confirmed. And the second is the listing of this property. This wasn't one family member selling the property to another family member, or just strictly a paper sale from one company to another company owned by the same group. This was listed on the market. They were asking $750,000. They didn't get it. They dropped the asking price to $550,000. They didn't get it. What they got was $500,000. This was an arm's length transaction, less than 60 days before the effective date. This is, in my opinion, pretty obvious what the market indicated that this property was worth, based essentially at the effective date. And so appreciate the revised value of $570,000 from the city, but that's still over 10% more than what the owner bought it for. It'd be pretty hard to justify that being the actual value. So again, this is, in my opinion, pretty clear cut that the property was worth $500,000 in early 2021, and that's what the assessed value should be. And that is my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Pontonia. Any questions?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Diamond, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Nesbitt?
No questions, thank you.
And I have no questions. Is there a need for a summary, Mr. Pontonia?
No summary on my part. I believe that I've presented what I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brady, summary?
No, I think I've said all I need to say.
Thank you. Having heard the evidence, we will move on to the next matter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. And if we can move on, please, to number 2 on the docket today.
Mr. Chair, there's no one in attendance for 845 McGregor Street.
Okay, let's stand that matter down to the end of the docket and we can decide what we're going to do with it. Is that acceptable?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. We'll stand that matter down then until the end of the docket, at which point we will go in camera and decide what we're going to do with it. Then we will move on. Number 4 has been removed from the docket. We will move on to number 5, please. That's 221 Vaughan Street.
Mr. Chair, there's no one in attendance for this property.
Okay, then we will similarly stand this matter down and deal with it at the end of the docket. Decide what we're going to do in camera and then come back to it. Then we will move to number 7 on the list. That's at 251 Bond Street, and I believe we do have someone here for that, Mr. Smith, and if you can swear him in, please.
Mr. Applicant, please state your full name,
Trevor Smith,
and you affirm the evidence you're about to present at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Pontanilla, we're moving to the street address of 251 Vaughan Street now. That's number 7 on our list. Are there any preliminary matters to deal with here?
None to deal with, no.
Okay, thank you. Then if you can proceed with your presentation, please.
Okay, so up next we have file 23-388. The roll number is 1209-368-8000. The address is 251 Vaughan Street. The 2024 assessed value as of April 1st, 2021 has gone, reference period, sorry, has gone out at $1,214,000. So we also have this labeled as a CMRST. We have 7 premises on the income stream. It's a 1-story building. We have the actual years built of 1937 and 1946 with an effective year built of 1966 overall. And we do have 9,552 square feet of gross leasable area, although there is a difference between the way it's used, but I just wanted to point that out because that might come up later on in our discussions. On page 2, if you look at in my brief, you'll see an image of the subject property and its relation to the neighborhood. On page 3, we see an overhead view of the subject property. And then on page 4 and 5, we can see an east-facing and a south-facing view, or sorry, a south-facing and an east-facing view of the subject property. It's a little difficult to see as it's right downtown and there's a lot of tall buildings around. And then on page 5, we can see some Google Street View images of the subject property. So we have received a request from the building owner for income and expense information, so we have no problem there. We do have 2 sales on the subject property. The oldest one is from April 23rd, 2008 for $780,000. And then we have a March 23rd, 2018 sale on there for $1,250,000. On page 7, I did include some rent comparables. So these rent comparables wouldn't necessarily be from directly within the subject property, but I did want to compare apples to apples. So I did do a search using the same property type of commercial retail store, CMRST, and I did have my limit for effective age at 1969. So we can, so that the effective age is roughly within the 1966 of the subject property. And my leasable area was from 500 to 1,999 square feet. So I tried to keep it as tight as I could, even though, of course, it wasn't some of the comparables aren't from directly within the neighborhood. And I do have a range in rents that ranges from $14 at the lower end to about $23 at the higher end. Okay, and I do have a recommendation to make on this file, so I thought it'd be important just to go over that first, and then I can show you where I made my adjustments. So we do have 7 premises, as I previously mentioned. 3 out of those 7 premises are used as basement storage units. So we currently have the 3 as 08 substandard basement, or just basement space that we have. And then we have the 4 C2 premises for the areas that we have for the CRUs that we have for the subject property. And so if we look at that, we do have a total square footage of 9,552 square feet for a total potential rent of $106,252. So if you just take a little bit of math there, it's actually not as clear as what is showing there, because if we add up the, if you just give me 1 second here, if we add up the 4 premises that are used for retail in retail manner. we actually have a total of $89,379. And if we add up the bottom three that we use as the storage space, 6756, 7310 plus 2807. We do have $16,873 that was assigned as storage space. So after consultation with some of my colleagues, and then I was able to get some information from the appellant as well, from Trevor, I was able to justify an adjustment on the storage space rents. So for my recommendation, I actually have, if I go down the income stream on my recommendation, I already went on what the model had done previously. What I have now is I have 1,762 square feet at $17.75. That's the top premise. 1,000 square feet at 1,846 square feet. That's the next premise. 541 square feet at $19.26. That's the third premise. And 1,639 square feet at $17.83. That's the fourth premise. Those rents are going to stay the same. The ones that I adjusted would be the rents for the storage spaces that they have. And so the adjustment would be 2,138 square feet at a revised modeled storage rental rate of $2.19 per square foot. And then we have 1,639 square feet at a revised rental rate of $2.23. And then I also have 833 square feet at a revised rate of $2.34 per square foot. So that brings us to a total revised potential amount of $99,665. And when we use the total area, it does drop the overall price per square foot to $10.43. I'm looking at it from a total. And then from there, we do have a vacancy.
Excuse me, Mr. Pontinia, can you just repeat those new rental rates that you're recommending and the total again? Sorry about that.
Yep. So the new recommended rates are 2,138 square feet. That's the top 08 basement at $2.19.
Yep.
1,639 square feet at $2.23, 223.
Yep.
And 833 square feet at $2.34. So if you add up the total that's being given there now, I've reduced the overall storage value from the previous 16,000 that we had to a revised amount of 10,286.
Thank you very much.
And then from there, we just do the model parameters that we had. We had a 6% vacancy, a $7 shortfall per square foot, a 3% expense rate, and then we have the modeled cap rate of 7.65% to give us the revised value of $1,135,000.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Just the final value?
Yes, please.
$1,135,000. 1,135,000.
Thank you.
And that's my presentation on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Questions? Or you've heard the recommendation, first of all. What is, or is this the first time you've heard the recommendation?
No, I heard it yesterday evening when I saw it.
Okay.
And I thank the city for having a second look at it, but we're not necessarily in agreement.
Good. Thank you. Then your questions, please, for Mr. Pontinia.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Am I still able to finish my presentation?
Sorry,
Pardon me?
Roddy's not done yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Please continue with your presentation. I thought you were done.
No, and then so from there, if we go to our cap rate information, we do have the standard cap rate information, standard municipal assessment act excerpts, and then we do have the mailer information that we have there. And the mailer is listing a total gross rent of $128,820.86. That is a gross rate, but if we try to net it out with a simple calculation just to see what it comes out to, we do have 128,820.86. And if we times that by 0.65, it's just a rough idea, we get $83,733. $83,733. So then if you look at what the model had, with its rates. If we add those up there, so we have 31,276 plus 18,460 plus 10,420 plus 29,233. We're at $89,389. So I just want it to be known that it's important that I did take a review of that. I looked at the mailer information, I looked at the leases, and I tried to get the model to behave, so to speak, as to what they were declaring on their returns. And that would be my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pontier. Mr. Smith, any questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on that point, Roddy, I was having a little bit of difficulty following you. So you said you ended up at 83,000 roughly by deducting the total expenses from the rental income. I didn't quite get
So
that.
what I did was because the rental income declared as gross, I wanted to get an idea of what the net total potential rent would be. And so I did a rough calculation. Obviously, it's very difficult within the time frame to net out all of the utilities and try to get the proper amounts on that. But you can do a rough idea by doing approximately 65% of what the gross total potential would be. And that would be the netted out net potential after netting out the management fees, the utility rates, and the property taxes.
Right.
So then
I
from
see.
there, I wanted to get a better, clear idea of apples to apples comparison. So once I netted it out, then I was able to see what the model is predicting, which should be net rates. And then that way I can compare a proper comparison of if it's overvaluing or undervaluing the property.
Right, fair enough. Now I follow you. So, and it did come in under what the revised projected amount is from the city?
I believe
83 versus 89 roughly?
83 versus 89, yeah, roughly there, about there, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And I did take into consideration the storage rates from the brief that you had submitted, and then that's where I adjusted the rates on the basement that we were putting on. It was currently coming in a little bit higher than what I thought it should be, and so I adjusted them so that it would be at around approximately the same value that you were using for the storage rates.
Okay, and your basement revenue, the revised basement revenue came in. Do you have a figure for that?
The revised was $10,286, 10,286.
10,286. Okay.
And the original value that we had when it went out at assessment was 16,873. So I was able to take off about $6,000 in value there.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So I think a lot of our focus here will be on the rental rates that are applied. So if we look at your page number 8 and the net rental rates that are used on the above the actual leasable area units. Pardon me. We're at high $17, mid 18, and over $19 per square foot. Those would be higher than what the net rents would be on the subject property once you did the calculation to determine what it was.
So yes, some of them did come a little bit under, but there was also the top one. If you look at the lease for unit 251,
yes,
we do have a lease that ranges from 2015 to 2023 for 1,000 square feet at $2,991.67 a month. So that equals approximately about $35.90 per square foot gross. If we do our same netting technique to try to see what the net rental rate would be, it would come out to $23.34. So $23.34 was what we had there. And then if we look at what the model had for that aluminum store, the aluminum sound retail business there, we have it at $18.46. So we're actually a few dollars below on the lease for the for that one for aluminum sound. Now, if we look at the other two leases, we do have the barber shop and we do have a wellness store. If we do the same analysis to try to net out what the rental rates would be, approximately, we have $14.46 for ZZ Barber, and we have $14.13 for Revolution Wellness. So if we look at those two and what the model's projecting for those, we have $17 for the Revolution Wellness, and then we have $17 for the barbershop. So it's always a matter of balance, right? We have it's over modeling on those two premises by a few dollars, but then it's also under modeling on the other one by about $3 or $4 too. So that's where I sort of did my analysis, and I took a look and I thought about it, and I thought maybe the overall price per square foot, to me, it seems to be in line. And then we also had a sale from 2018 for $1,250,000.
Right.
So then when you look at that as a whole, and then you see that the revision is $1,135,000. I didn't include it in my brief, but I was able to see, I believe there was an appraisal. Maybe Trevor, you can talk more about it. But I was able to see an appraisal value on it. And because I didn't include it, I'm not expecting the board to put a lot of weight on it. But with that being said, that $1,135,000 is almost a bullseye to what the appraisal was. So in my opinion, $1,135,000 is a good value for the subject property. It seems to fall in line with all the other indicators that we have of market value.
Okay, so we'll just take a quick look at the rental comparables, and as we've had some communication back and forth on the property a little bit. Would you agree that I had indicated that your comparables numbers one, that being 266 Portage Avenue, and comparable number three at comparable number two at 107 Osborne, that those rental rates are actually gross rental rates?
You know what, Trevor, you told me that late yesterday and today. I haven't had a chance to look at it, so I'm not going to either disagree or agree with you. This is the information that we had in our system that was verified by one of our staff that would have put it in as comparable information. So I appreciate that you found those discrepancies, but I didn't see them myself.
Fair enough.
So I'm not going to indicate whether they're correct or incorrect.
Yeah, fair enough, and I understand that, and I don't want to be confrontational about this. I simply need to get the information out. That's all. So
no, I understand.
I'll probably discuss it, I guess, in reference in my my discussion. In looking at the other comps here, we have a strip center in Corridon, street front retail, kind of in the heart of Corridon. Similar one on McPhillip Street, and then Stafford Henderson. Would it be fair to characterize these as being superior locations to the subject property?
I mean, superior in the sense that they have access and I guess easier to locate, one could say. But I mean, the subject is downtown. I mean, we have tons of traffic that comes downtown too. And if I'm not misunderstanding, the subject is actually on the corner of Vaughan and Graham, I believe. And there's actually a transit stop right there. So there's a lot of traffic that goes through. So it depends on how you look at it.
I'll discuss that, I guess, in my presentation rather than continuing the questioning of it. Those are really all of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Diamond, any questions?
Were you asking me if I had questions?
Yes, Mr. Diamond.
Don't have. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Nesbitt, questions?
Yes, just a quick one. Mr. Pontinia, you may have given the number, but you know, I didn't, I am not quick enough to write them all down so fast. Did you do the same calculations that you did for the basement premises for the main floor premises? What is the overall in your model just for the main floor premises? And what is the number? Did you look at the I&E and try to net it out for the main premises?
So the work, the work that I did do for the main floor rental rates, that was netted out. That's what we had just spoken about when we went over the analysis of what was being declared versus what the model was projecting. For the storage rental rates,
I'm looking for the overall. Yeah.
So for the storage rental rates, we actually don't have any declaration of value on them. These storage, from my understanding, Mr. Smith might be able to elaborate on it, but from my understanding of the subject, these storage basement premises are used exclusively. Maybe I shouldn't say exclusively because I did see a note that there was some things put in, but the majority of the space is used by the property owners for storing whatever it is they store there. So I haven't done an inspection on it, but it's just my understanding is that it's not leasable area in the sense that it's not used by the retail businesses that are operating, other than just putting things down there, from my understanding. And so from that perspective, we don't have any declaration of value on that. And so when I looked at Mr. Smith's brief, I noticed that he was using $12,000, which I thought wasn't an unreasonable amount to put on the storage rates. And so my analysis was basically just trying to put a nominal rate that would be fair on the basement, that would still give some value to the subject, but would acknowledge that it's not used as a leasable area, so it's not going to be receiving by any means top rental rates. And
no, and I appreciate you
know the
talked
price
about
for-
the storage. I was asking about the 4 main premises, the non-storage.
Sure. So if you want to do that, if you just give me 1 minute, I'll just add up the calculations here for you. I can give it to you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, just give me 1 second. So if you don't mind doing me a favor, if you can write out 4,942 square feet. That's the retail space that we have.
Yeah.
And then 89,379. And if we divide that by, what was it, 49.42?
Yeah.
It gives us a price per square foot of $18. That's just for the retail space.
Okay, and when you looked at the INE,
When we looked at the INE, if we do a total there, the INE was, if you just give me 1 second to open it. The INE was, so they did a total of 128,820. 820.86. But that's gross, so we'll times that by 0.65 to give us a rough idea of net. So that's 83,733. And then
right,
if we
you did
divide,
mention, yeah,
and if we divide that value by the total leasable area that they declare of 4,900, which is almost exactly what we have $17.08 as an overall price per square foot. So
okay,
that would give the model at $1 over what the actuals are being declared at
okay,
for the retail space. And then we added once again that nominal rate on the storage space of approximately $10,000. And then that's what gives us our overall, which we then go down into the income stream, and we come out with the revised value of $1,135,000, which again, I thought that was a good recommendation. It seemed to be all in line with the sale we have from 2018 from the appraisal that I took a look at. I don't see how it would be lower than that, but I'll leave that to you guys to decide.
mm-hmm. 256 Kennedy is pretty close to this property, and it's in your rent comparables, and it's $14 a square foot. What is that? Is this a similar type of property?
We have it as a nail salon.
A
we have
nail
it as a nail
salon?
salon. Bear in mind, it's 578 square feet. It's from 1918. Subject property is 1966.
Okay,
So there are some differences. I mean, if you compare that value to what was being declared on the mailer for that size, I believe it came out to like $14 for the Zizou barbershop. So
Okay.
14 to 14, that's what was being declared. The model might have came in a little higher on it, but excuse me, once again, we do
Okay.
have to, we have an overall approach where we try to let the model do the majority of the heavy lifting.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Pontanilla.
Welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Nesbitt. I have a question, Mr. Fontanilla, with respect to the sale in 2018.
Yep.
Is that an arm's length sale, or is there any indication on your file about that?
From my understanding and my view of it, it would be, it was verified, it was included, and it would be an arm's length fee simple sale. And then we
Thank
also have the second sale from 2008 for $780,000, which is also a fee simple verified sale and was included in our analysis. So I do want to make a distinction between those two values, the 780 to the 1,250,000. So we can see over the years that they were two arm's length transactions, and it did go up to 1,250,000. It's important to see that. It's important to understand that in the analysis.
Thank you. The last question I have is with respect to your rent comparable at 266 Portage Avenue at $20.53. It's 1,800 square feet, it looks like. What kind of business is that, or do you know?
So we have the tenant as just a name. I don't want to list it because we are on the public record, but the tenant that we have there is simply a name. So to be honest, I'm not really sure what the use would be. This
Okay.
would have fallen under the commercial retail store, CMRST. Mr. Smith might know, maybe he's a little bit more aware of it as he was speaking about this one comp in particular earlier. But I have it as a store, so I'm not really sure if it's like a retail store or a convenience store. It's just a name that's there for the tenant, so.
And with your final question, with the final amount, and I'm sure you said that I just wasn't fast enough to write it down, the revised NOI?
Oh, the revised net operating income that we used? Actually, I don't know if I did say it. So if we go down through the income stream with the new nominal rates on the basement, and then we go through the income stream, the revised NOI is 86,863. 86,863.
Thank you very much. Those are my questions. Mr. Smith, your presentation, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So, obviously, the property we're dealing with is 251 Vaughan Street. I'll address the sale of the property, as that clearly is something that should be discussed. So yes, it is an arm's length sale as of 2018 at that time frame. What I can tell you with regard to the sale is that yes, it's arm's length. This is an investor that essentially owns one property. He's not an astute investor, did have the money available to make a purchase and did so. Frankly, he paid too much for the property at the time frame. Now, the other aspect to take into account is that the area, in terms of desirability and leasability and rental rates, etc., of the subject property has declined since the time of both of that purchase in 2018, as well as the initial filing of the income and expense for the 2020 year, as we'll see as we go through this. So there's been a shift in that area, a decline in the economic prospects and socioeconomic issues in that particular area that are indicative that the assessed value is too high, and that certainly the price paid for it back in 2018 is not reflective of the market value for the subject property today. So we'll delve into that in a moment. One thing that has come up and will be discussed, I'm sure, is the basement issue, and I think the city has recognized that, which we certainly appreciate. Just to make it clear to the panel, if you flip to, and I won't know what number this is in your PDF, but it's labeled as A14 in the addenda. Just wait for everybody to get there. It's actually A14 and A15.
LoopNet?
Yes, LoopNet, that's correct. So this is...
Just wait, Mr. Diamond, Ms. Nesbitt, have you got that?
Okay, A14 I've got.
Okay, great. So it's A14 in the following page. This is a much older listing for the subject property, but what I'm pointing out here, if you flip to A15, oh, wait a minute. No, it is on A14 rather. The total space rentable, 1,000 square feet. So it's one of the units. And what it indicates under description is includes full basement for storage. So two things there. Basement is just used for storage as recognized by the city, and there's no additional area that is attributable to the leasable area. And this is an important important aspect of the valuation in the Winnipeg market, and indeed in other markets, their commercial spaces are leased out based on the above grade leasable area. You don't include the basement space in the leasable area and apply a rental rate to that. Now, the city has applied significantly lower rental rates to that basement space in their valuation model, but the fact remains that the leasable area of the building is simply the above grade space and not the below grade space. There would be no direct rent attributable to that as being included in the lease where you're paying X amount per square foot. That would be only applied to the above grade area, not the basement space. So that is that aspect. Looking at the subject property, we can begin on my page number 3. The property, obviously 251 Fawn. We're looking at property that was built in 2 stages. The original building was built in 1937, 2,100 square feet, plus equivalent basement space. And then the addition was put on in 1946, that being 3,675 square feet plus basement. Now that's the gross floor area. The actual leasable area is 4,968 square feet in total leasable area. It consumes the whole site, and there is no on-site parking, obviously being downtown. In the location that it is, there is no on-site parking. It's all street front parking, etc. So let's look at the subject property itself. Again, built in 37 and 46. Obviously, most properties from that time frame have had renovations and upgrades. That would include this one, but that is the original date of construction. So your foundation and other aspects of the property do date from that time frame. So photos of the property begin on page 4. You can see exterior from the street front at the top of page 4, bottom of page 4, top of page 5. And then just for context, looking north along Vaughan, you can see where the property is located adjacent to the former Hudson's Bay building, which has been vacated for quite some period of time and has now transitioned to other ownership. I believe it's a First Nations group that has ownership of that particular property now. The other thing I'll point out there is that you see the above grade walkway that runs from the Hudson Bay building through the Power building, which is to the north of this site, which is at the corner of Graham and Vaughan, and then over into the Portage Place shopping center. I'll discuss that in a minute. Looking at the units themselves, so we have kind of a catch-all business right on the corner, called Movies, Music, and More. If you go inside, the majority of the space is devoted to cannabis accessories, I guess is what I would call it. As you can see on page number 6. The interior of the hair salon is shown top of page 7 and the bottom as well. And we have the pizza place at the bottom of page 8, as well as a picture of their kitchen on pages 8 and 9. So move forward to my page number 10. The site description. So again, we're looking at a location adjacent to the former Hudson Bay building on the corner of Graham and Vaughan, located 1 block south of Portage Avenue. immediate area, as I described in page 10, has extensive socioeconomic challenges which have impacted the desirability of properties in the area for potential tenants. As I described or mentioned earlier, that Portage Place being on the north side of Portage Avenue there, 1 block to the north, it's not a benefit. Portage Place has very significant ongoing issues, extensive chronic vacancy issues that really are not solvable. It's been attempted by numerous owners and potential purchasers over time to make that property function effectively. None of them have been successful. It continues on in a declining manner as far as the desirability of that particular property. Closer in proximity and equally relevant is the street front retail on Portage Avenue. So if you look between Memorial Street and Main Street and you look at the street front commercial properties available there, very, very significant vacancy in that stretch of Portage Avenue on both the north and south sides of Main Street. This includes and indeed might be a little bit more prevalent in close proximity to the subject property itself, with extensive vacancy being available in very close proximity to the subject. So the area of the subject property obviously has a very significant impact on their ability to draw tenants and the amount that tenants will be willing to pay for that property. And of course, that can change quickly over time as well. Property location shown on page number 11, I've already described it. And we can skip forward into the valuation itself. So what I've done here on page 14 is kind of 2 steps. If you look at the chart at the top of the page, this is in the details from the 2020 year-end income and expense report. So we have the property operates on a gross rent basis to start with. We've made the appropriate deductions for that based on the operating expenses of that year. And you can see what the equivalent net rental rates would be per square foot for each of those units. That was in the initial 2020 year-end income and expense form. Now, over the course of that year and into 2021, obviously we were experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic, and there were significant impacts on this property and on other properties based on the COVID-19 pandemic. What I will do at this point is take you forward to what's labeled as page A5 and A6 and A7 of my brief. I'll just wait for you to get there. Are we all there?
Okay, I think we can go, yes.
Okay, so as you can see on page A5, 253 Vaughan closed during COVID and abandoned the unit with 2 years remaining on their lease. Page A6, 1 closed permanently, that being the 253 Vaughan. 1 closed and applied for government assistance for a period of 3 months. And then just further referring to the closure of the 1 tenant on the following page. So there was a direct impact on the subject property due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So this was also recognized by the landlord, and they made adjustments to their leases during that time frame. Which are shown at the bottom of page 14 in the other chart. Now, we don't have the specific dates of these, but they occurred during that 2020 early 2021 timeframe where the adjustments were made in order to keep the businesses in place and operating rather than have units go dark. So during the 2021 year, the following adjustments were made. So you have that aluminum sound, which had a net rate of 25.19. That dropped to roughly 18.44 per square foot. Similarly, they did put a tenant into 253 for $13.14 a square foot, which we'll get to in a bit. And then the following tenants, 281 and 1093 were their net equivalent rates. So overall, this would come out surprising to a very round number of $10 net per square foot based on those figures. Property, the pizza place, which just opened up in 2021, is now looking to sell their business and sublease at a rate of $12.50. It's been on the market for a year. They have no takers. And the adjacent property immediately to the north, which is the Power Building, has had a street front retail unit with significantly better improvements for lease at a rate of $11 per square foot. If you wish to see that one, it is in the addenda materials on, I believe it's page A-16. You can see those improvements. So that's the background for you. That's what they were getting. That's what the adjustments were. We're looking at about $10 net per square foot. So is that appropriate as far as the rental rate? So let's look at the market for comparison. Similarly to the assessor, there are always challenges in getting perfect comparables. We tried to keep our comparables as close as possible in terms of location, that being downtown. Not all of them are, but this gives you a good indication of what was paid for partial space in the downtown in close proximity to the subject. So our first comparable, 401 Graham. This is an urban bakery. This is a significantly older lease in 2014 at $9 a square foot. So I'm not suggesting that it should be $9. That would obviously increase from that time frame. But what I will point out is that our comparable number 9, 415 Graham, is the same building or the same block. And we have a lease from 2018 in that location. So same location at $12 per square foot. So that's essentially the shift that we're seeing over that time frame. Second comparable, well, it's similar size, but it's in the suburbs. I'm not putting a lot of weight on that one, but they're achieving a little over $12 a square foot for that. 90 Gary, similarly, while it's downtown, it's not an excellent comp. It's in the base of a high-rise apartment building. They're achieving $10 there in 2018. What I would put weight on is if you look at comps numbers 4 and 5, this is 428 Portage and 261B Vaughan. It's actually the same building. This is the Power Building. It is an older building built in 28 with some addition in 46. And it has, it's largely an office building with main floor retail. So these are the retail sections of that building. And we have 2 leases at $6 per square foot going back to 2016 and 2015. Obviously, those are somewhat dated and those would rise over time, but that's the immediate area. That's also the building where they're looking to get $11 per square foot, which they haven't been able to achieve yet. 470 River Ave, not right downtown, but similar density neighborhood, good profile. 11.16 per square foot for that particular property. And then 353 Provencher strip mall just into St. Boniface, $13 a square foot. Number 2, Donald. $11 per square foot. So while these all aren't, 2021 leases, etc., you can see the general trend in terms of rental rates going up to around $12, perhaps slightly more for some better properties, slightly less for ones that aren't quite as good. So as I'd mentioned, subject property has space for lease for over a year at $12.50. They can't get a deal done there. Neighboring property, which is Superior, is at $11 per square foot. For valuation purposes, I put a blanket rate of $12 per square foot on my valuation. I think perhaps the $10 net overall would be too low and produce a value that wouldn't be applicable, wouldn't be appropriate for the subject property. So I put the upper end of the range, as I see it, at $12 per square foot on the subject property. The other thing I was going to point out, so 256 Kennedy that the city has comp number 3 in their list at $14.01 per square foot. The 401 415 Graham is immediately across the street. And they're getting $12 in that location 3 years later than the city's comparable. So it's an area that has its challenges. So $12 per square foot is what we've applied. As I mentioned, basement space does not have a direct lease rate applied to it in our market for valuation. It is, however, an amenity that's there. They don't actually get any contribution from the basement space as far as revenue. But in order to recognize the utility of that space being there in the market value, I've applied a gross storage rent of $1,000 a month, which would come to $12,000 annually. This is, in my opinion, extremely optimistic that they would achieve this and they would rent the entire basement space for $1,000. However, we need to recognize it, so I've applied it. And if you were to add that revenue into the overall revenue, this would bring the rental rate up to $14.41 per square foot for the above grade space, if you were to look at it in that fashion. So let's move on to the expense side of the equation. Vacancy, subject property did have vacancy. Obviously, they had a unit go dark. They were at 12% in 2020. We're not asking for 12%. The downtown district, according to the Johnson report, is showing retail vacancy that's higher at 11.2 and 7.9% for a 5-year average, so above what the city is allowing. For the purposes of valuation, we've gone with 6% in our valuation, as again, the overall market value does need to make sense, and we feel that that issue is taken care of in our other valuation parameters, including the capitalization rate. The expense allowance, Mr. Chair, I believe we've gone through this in detail with all 3 panel members. I won't cover that ground if you're okay with that.
I don't want to restrict you. I'm very familiar with the analysis, as I'm sure both Mr. Diamond and Ms. Nesbitt are as well. So
certainly, I will save us all that time then, and we can move forward to capitalization rate. So cap rate, it's important to take into account all of the things that go into a capitalization rate, the desirability of the property, location, construction, age, all of these things. But with retail, location is critical. This location has shifted quite dramatically over time. As I mentioned, the original price paid for the property is above what we would consider appropriate for the property, given the conditions as of the valuation date and indeed beyond. So let's look at what the market has to say as far as cap rate goes. If we look at 2 of the main commercial brokerages, Cushman Wakefield and CB Richard Ellis, For non-anchored retail strip malls, so this isn't really a strip mall, but for the purposes of comparison, we'll look at that. For investment grade resale assets, so well located, well tenanted, national tenancies, typically these two commercial brokerages are indicating a range of 6.5 to 7.25% for non-anchored retail strips. Well, this isn't a non-anchored retail strip. It's local tenants. They're struggling with rental rates, struggling with occupancy. The area itself is depressed and is not on the way up. It's adjacent to, again, the former Hudson Bay building, which is likely to has been vacant for quite some time and will likely remain vacant for the foreseeable future. The area has declined, as I've indicated. So let's look at the comps that we do have here. These are all three transactions of well-located, well-tenanted, investment grade retail strip malls in Winnipeg. They're not downtown, but they're certainly more desirable than the subject property in its particular condition and location. So 1411 Henderson Highway being the first one. Well located, good parking out towards the Chief Peguis end of Henderson Highway. Good signage, national tenancies, and we have a cap rate of 8.9% being paid for that property in 2021. So virtually at the valuation date. Second one, 130 Osborne, 435 Stradbrook, right at the corner of River and Osborne, a 2018 transaction at 7.5%. Similarly, a number of national tenancies, good parking, excellent profile. And finally, 1800 Corridon Avenue, the third one, a 2019 transaction at a cap rate of 7% at the bottom end. This being a very well located, recently constructed boutique strip mall in the River Heights area adjacent to Tuxedo with high-end boutique tenancies. Each of these properties would be considered significantly superior to the subject. Subject is an older property in a poor retail location, poor layout and finishes as shown in the photos, and poor overall curb appeal for potential tenants and customers. So looking at all of these factors, we've applied a capitalization rate of 8%. Giving us a market value of $757,000. Now, let's go back into the comparison on page 19. So again, only the leasable area above grade is applicable. So we've applied the $12 to that. We've added in the storage revenue of $12,000, which would take you up to roughly $14.43 per square foot. Our other parameters are there, largely unchanged other than the expense allowance, and we've applied a more appropriate capitalization rate of 8% to the subject property to recognize its desirability as an investment asset. So final market value is $757,000. We've included the I&Es for you in the addenda, as well as the other properties that we referred to. With regard to capitalization rate, we have a couple of decisions here indicating properties in the immediate area or of a similar nature with cap rates that were applied by the board in this cycle of 8.25% and 8.25% to similarly located assets, that one of them being Old Calcutta on Portage Avenue. So similar issues surrounding that one. That is my presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Pontanilla, questions?
Sure, I have a couple for him. The first question actually is in regards to when we were speaking earlier. Mr. Smith mentioned something about having received the recommendation late yesterday evening.
Sorry, if I can interrupt, can you speak up or speak a little closer to the mic?
Can you hear me
please?
better now?
Oh, yeah, and thank you.
That's okay?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, so when Mr. Smith, we had spoken earlier, he had mentioned that he had received the recommendation for 1,135,000 yesterday evening. When you asked him about how he received it. For the record, I just want the board to understand that, and for Mr. Smith as well. Mr. Smith, are you aware that I had actually sent you an email September 13th where I requested some information in regards to the basement?
I was, yes, and I had a bit of a challenge getting in touch with the ownership in order to confirm that detail. So unfortunately, I got that yesterday, and what sent it to you yesterday, I realized
Yesterday
that's
more, yeah. And
not
then
ideal.
when you sent it to me, I immediately sent you the recommendation yesterday afternoon. Is that not correct?
Yes, when I looked at the timing of it, it did come in the afternoon. I didn't see it until the evening, but I'm sure you're correct as to the timing of when you sent it.
I don't want the characterization to be that I bombed you at the last minute
Oh,
with the
no.
recommendation. I was attempting to get in contact with you for a good week to have a discussion about it.
And please don't take it that way. I wasn't trying to indicate that you sent it out in the evening and it was a last minute thing. I grant you that you had asked for information on the basement and I was unable to confirm the details until that last moment, and you did send the information. I didn't see it until the evening, that's all.
Okay,
so
thank you.
I apologize if there was
to be
any
clear for my own
miscommunication.
character. On page
My apologies.
on page A16, you included the I guess that would be, is that a recent ad that would be for the subject property for a leasable area? 261, I guess?
Yeah, that is the adjacent property to the north, that being the power building.
Okay, and then if I'm looking closer at the details, when does it say the move-in date would be for this lease information?
Sorry, Mr. Pontier, I'm going to ask that you speak a little bit closer to the microphone, please.
Okay, so for the lease information, when was this ad supposed to be available to take over for the lease?
When was it? I'm sorry. When was it supposed to be able to?
What period does this ad refer to for the latest ad that you have on page A16 and A17?
Oh, I see what you're. Yeah. It would be after the valuation date. Yes.
So I would ask that the board not include this information in, as it is post the April 1st, 2021 economic reference period that we speak of. That would be A16, A17, and A18.
So to that end, and I certainly take your point and understand it. I guess my experience would be that moving forward using the mass appraisal model, that the issues such as this wouldn't be applied in the future assessment. So it's difficult to get recognition of these conditions that are happening as of that time frame to be taken into account in the appropriate time. So while that is from a later date, they were also having earlier issues on that building similar to the subject property. So.
Okay, and then on page A19, I noticed that you've included a 15-1 document. Can I ask why you included this document?
Sorry, which page?
This document in the conversation with the subject property.
Which page are we looking at?
A19. This 15-1.
Okay, yeah, I see it.
They are made without prejudice, so I'd really like to know what the relevance was, first of all, as it's not even the same address, and secondly, why it was even included in the first place. None of these documents are supposed to be included, as they are all made without prejudice.
So I take your point, Mr. Fontanillo. The point is that the value that we agreed to on both sides is virtually the same valuation that I had submitted, which is on the following pages. I'm not looking to provide information that has no relevance to the subject property, etc. It's simply background for the panel members.
That background is a 15-1 without prejudice document, though. That's those documents are supposed to be made without the intention of it being included in any public evidence submissions.
Well, so here's my question to you then, Mr. Pontonia. If we're aware that this evaluation such as this, based on roughly the same rental rate and cap rate, were struck on a very similar property, shouldn't that also be taken into account on the subject property, perhaps?
We're
We're going to stop this discussion right now. This isn't an opportunity for both of you to engage in a dialogue about the appropriateness of evidence that has been submitted. This evidence has been submitted. We will give it the weight that we find appropriate to this. I would note that at the introduction, assessments of other properties will not be considered as evidence. So I leave it at that, and hopefully that ends this discussion with respect to this 15-1 document. Okay, please continue.
That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nesbitt.
Mr. Smith, you talked about revised rental rates, and can I just clarify the time frame again for those revised rental rates that you reported?
Yeah, so if you look at my page number 14, there is no specific date or time that was is provided or noted. Mostly that's to do with the reporting of the income and expense form and the narrow categories as it's struck, start date, end date, etc. But each of the leases was changed in order to reflect the economic circumstances and the need to retain these tenancies during that 2020-2021 time period.
So is there a possibility that they're post-reference?
It's unlikely that they're post-reference, but it is possible, yes. The heart of the COVID issue was largely during 2020, extending slightly into 2021, but we did, there is that possibility, yes.
Okay,
I can't confirm that they didn't happen then, but the indication is that that is when they would have happened.
Okay, and I didn't see anything in your evidence that would suggest an agreement with the tenants as to a revised rate, or is it somewhere in the back somewhere and I might have missed it?
I've included the INEs as indicated in the addenda materials, and it does give you the changed gross rental rates in the INE there as well. It doesn't specifically refer to specific change, but if you do the math, you can see the changes that happened.
Okay, can you just point me to that page quickly? Because I've skimmed through that back and I've obviously missed it.
Sure.
So, oh, there it is. There, I think that's it.
You found
around
it?
Page 27 of your brief.
I don't have that, but it would be on my A-10, I believe, which might be 27.
A-10. Sorry, just now looking for the page number because my document is now sideways. Okay. So is that it then on, okay, I see. Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Diamond.
No, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Mr. Smith, with respect to the calculations that we heard about, I believe Mr. Pontonia used 0.65 or 65% of the gross income to give a net effective income. Do you agree with those calculations?
Well, in order to arrive at the net effective, we deducted the operating expenses from the gross amount to arrive at the net effective rate.
Right. But you
which is different than the value that he arrived at, I believe, slightly different ways of doing it, but this is recognizing the actual expenses of the property in order to arrive at the net effective for each individual tenancy.
Because I'm looking at your gross potential income of $71,616 found at page 19 in your chart. And we've had a lot of discussion about the lease rates and the storage revenue, but that's what you're indicating that your gross potential income for this property is a $71,616.
That is what I'm saying. It should be based on market rental rates as of that time frame, based on comps in the immediate area. I've applied a rate of $12 across the board to the main floor leasable area, and that being higher than the net effective of 10 that we showed in our bottom chart, and lower than the 1583, which is skewed by one tenant at the top chart on page 14. Now, to that, we added the 12,000 in revenue from the basement, which would take you up to
that's included in the 7116.
Yeah, so
Right.
that would take you to 1443 effectively as a net rental rate.
And that's based on your calculation of market rates based on the surrounding comps that you have provided and with the gross up for the storage.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Again, based on the actual leasable area of the main floor.
Okay, but not the actual lease amounts.
Not the actual lease amounts. No,
Okay.
we've gone higher than those.
Thank you. I have nothing further with respect to this property. Mr. Pontonia, any need for summary?
The summary in regards to specifically the subject property, I believe I've already given my presentation and provided my analysis as to how I ended up to my value. For final remarks, I would like to just remind the chair and the panel members that we did have a previous discussion on market value and the relevance of market value. And I would like that same consideration to be put to this subject property. If it makes sense for the other subject, then we should have some weight on a sale for this subject property as well. And that's my final comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any summary?
No, I believe I've covered it in enough detail for to give you the appropriate background. Thank you.
Okay, then I will conclude, or we'll have this matter as concluded, and we will take a short break until we come back in camera, maybe in 5 minutes, to discuss what to do with the two individuals who have not chosen to attend today. They haven't signed in at all.
Okay.
Thank you then. Thank you, Mr. Smith, and we'll maybe take a short 5-minute recess. Okay, is that fine? Ms.
Yeah,
Desmond?
that's okay. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Great.
Thank you for your
Thank
time,
you.
everyone.
We are live. I'd like to call this meeting back to order, please. Turning to number 2 on the docket, I note that there is no appearance by the applicant on this matter, although some material was filed, and get to that shortly perhaps, but the panel is prepared to hear the application. And Mr. Pontonia, if you can turn your attention to number 2 on the list, please, 845 McGregor.
Okay, excellent. How do you guys hear now? Is it okay?
And you
Is it? Can
can't
you guys
hear you,
hear
I'm
me?
afraid.
What's that? Can you hear me okay?
Nope, nothing.
How about now?
Is he muted from our end or?
I can hear loud and clear.
Me
Lynn,
too.
can you? Okay,
Yep.
Wait, we can't.
Lynn can hear him.
Oh, you know what?
No.
Try now.
Hello, hello, hello. Testing,
I'm
testing.
sorry.
Okay, we
That
can,
Okay, all good.
okay. As I said before, this meeting is called back to order. You heard that part? Okay. Then Mr. Pontonia, can you please make your presentation or give us your presentation on 845 McGregor?
Sure. So up next, we have file 23-158. The roll number is 1102-097-1000. The address is 845 McGregor Street. The 2024 assessment has gone out at $310,000. And we do have a preliminary issue in regards to the non-compliance. So if
Okay,
we
I guess-
scroll down to If we scroll down to page 12, on page 12, we do have the Canada Post document that has been provided to us from Canada Post, showing that they did deliver the property at the, or that they did deliver the parcel at the subject property. And I'll note that you look at, to keep in mind the item number LP 657-129-690-CA. That's the tracking number, the item number. If you look at the item number on the following document, it's the same tracking number at the top, LP 657-129-690-CA. And you can see the schedule of the deliveries that took place. So you can see that the item had arrived June 10th, June 9th, June 10th, it was out for delivery. It looked like it went out to the subject and that a notice card was left indicating where to pick up the item. The item was returned to the post office. And then it was available up until the final notice went out at June 19th that the item was going to be returned to us if it wasn't collected within 10 days. And then by June 27th, the timeline had run out and the item was sent back to the department. And then if we go to page 16 of my brief, once again, I'd ask that you note the top tracking number, LP 657-129-690-CA. So that tracking number matches the documents that I had provided from Canada Post. And the address listed for the delivery is 845 McGregor Street. So that would have been the address we have on file. And then taking us to the end of the brief is the copies, the duplicates of the income and expense mailer documents that would have been issued to the subject property. And that's my presentation on that.
Mr. Diamond, have you any questions on the that part of the application?
Only that, Mr. Padilla, that it looks like even though it was mailed and it wasn't successfully received by the taxpayer, correct?
The schedule shows that it was delivered, there was an attempt to deliver it to the subject property and that it wasn't received, and so it went back to the post office.
And how do we know that the owner of the property received notification that this parcel was waiting for him?
Well, I'd say if they were here to speak to it, that'd be one indication. Besides that, there is really no way for us to know. These are the documents that are provided to us from Canada Post. This follows along with the schedule of deliveries that we have in place. So we can only go by what Canada Post provides us. We have to use the Canada Post documents as factual, that it was delivered and that it was not picked up by the subject property.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Nesbitt?
I'm just looking for that letter again. The main letter.
That would be
Okay,
on.
so it did go out. 845 McGregor is the address on record.
Yep, that's what we have on record, 845.
Okay. No, I don't think I have any additional questions. Thank you.
Yeah, the only question I have, and I'm just looking for confirmation on this, the letter is addressed to Martino 1979 Incorporated 845 McGregor. That is the owner on the title, listed on the title for 845 McGregor. Is that correct?
I'd have to take a look to see before I answer that. And I'm not really sure if I have access to that here because I'm on the, oh, maybe I do. 1 second. Or no. Yeah, I'm not sure if I can. I guess what we can do is we can look at the owner that's on the brief.
Right.
So if we look at the brief, the owner listed there is Emerald and Oak Ltd.
Right.
And then if we look at what's on the mailer there, now bear in mind there was a sale on the subject property, so the sale took place post reference.
Right.
So I did remove it from the brief. I did blank it out, but there is a post reference sale. I don't know if there's a difference now between what happened then, what happened now. Remember, this is going back to 2020, so we can only go by what was happening during that time.
Okay.
And who the owner was at that time.
Fair enough. Thank you. I don't have anything further. Can we go in camera for a minute or two? Thank you. Call this meeting back to order then, and for the record, the panel is prepared to grant the application pursuant to section 53 of the Municipal Assessment Act and place the burden of proof on the applicant for non-cooperation under section 53. In that regard, I do note that there has been no appearance by the applicant. That is noted, and I would ask Mr. Pontanilla, please, to introduce the property and make his presentation.
Okay, thank you. So I believe I went over the initial details.
Yes.
I went over the roll number, the assessed value. So we have it listed as a commercial retail store, CMRST. We have 2 premises associated with the income stream. It's a 1-story building. The actual year built and effective year built are both the same at 1956. And we do have a leasable area on file of 1,978 square feet. On page 2, we do have the pad eye view map of the subject property, so you can see its orientation in relation to the neighborhood. On page 3, we have the pictometry overhead view, where you can see the subject property. I guess that'd be sort of to the northeast of the parcel, where its orientation is. And then following that, we do have a north-facing view and a west-facing view of the subject property. And then following that, we do have the Google Street View images from 2021 showing the subject property. And I believe they operate as a salon. So we have not received any requests for income and expense information for both 2019 and 2020. We do have a subject, a sales history on the subject, but it is post-reference, so I have blanked it out. And we have no leases on the subject. For rent comparables, what I did was that once again, due to the difficulties of finding proper comparables within the neighborhood, I did do a citywide search, but using the parameters of the commercial retail store. And then I had the age no higher than 1979, I believe, to try to keep it within the subject's effective age. And then I had use and size as well to try to have it as close as I could to compare apples to apples with the subject property. So the majority of these comparables are used as salons. Their areas are roughly around what the subject is, and their effective ages are around in line where the subject is. And we do have rents ranging from $12.60 at the lower end to $17 at the higher end. So we do have 2 premises, as I previously mentioned, on file. We do have a C2 on the main floor for 989 square feet. And we have that at a modeled rental rate of $13.98 per square foot. And then we do have a C9 basement leasable. So I haven't had a chance to inspect the subject, as I didn't have any communication with the appellant who was in charge of the appeal. And so for that reason, I wasn't able to. And I didn't receive a brief either, so I didn't have any indicators as to whether we have a proper designation on the basement leasable area. We have it as C9. So my understanding is that there could be some, I guess there's some chairs down there, and maybe that's where they do their haircuts as well. But I don't have a brief, and I don't have any other information to rely on other than just a basic understanding of how the salons work. But with that being said, we do have a smaller valuation on the basement of $10.63, which brings us to a total of $24,339 for potential rent at 1,978 square feet. So if we just do a quick calculation of that, that gives us a price per square foot of $12.30. So seems to be reasonable and in line with the market data. And then from there, we have the model parameters of a 6% vacancy, a 3% expense, and a $7 shortfall to bring us to our net operating income of $21,362. And then we have a modeled cap rate of 6.9%, which then gives us the revised value of 310, or the assessed value of $310,000. Following that, on page 9, I just have the income value summary of what we just spoke about. On page 10, I have all the cap rate information. On page 11, I have a sample of the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts for the subject property. And then on page 12 and taking us to the end of the brief was the information in regards to the income and expense preliminary issue. And that's my presentation on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nesbitt, questions?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Pontier, I'm looking at your rental comparables on page 7.
Yep.
So none of these comparables are within that McGregor neighborhood. Would that be correct?
That's correct.
Would you think Academy Corridon might be superior to the McGregor address?
I mean, a hair salon cuts hair, so it all depends on the population and the people who go and get their hair cut. So in terms of densities of population, perhaps they're comparable. They're both neighborhoods. In terms of desirability, obviously, you know, one could make the argument that McGregor would be, I guess, inferior to a place like Academy Road. But with that being said, you know, we had the overall price that I had mentioned previously of $12.30. So if you look at even my comparables, that's actually at the lowest end out of all the comparables that I have. It's actually below the market data that I have, the lowest being $12.60 at 125 Enfield Crescent. And our overall price per square foot is even lower than that. So I thought I did look, and I thought the rental rate overall would be, you know, that would be something that would be within the range.
Excuse me. Yes, I do see that it's at the lower end. It's 30 cents or 40 cents less than the Academy Road one.
That's right.
Which isn't a whole heck of a lot, but, and I'm, you know, Portage Avenue, whereabouts would that be in that, how far out Portage Avenue is that?
1853, if my memory serves, that'd be around Ferry Road, I think. I think it's around there.
Okay.
Maybe in the St. James neighborhood.
Yeah, okay. And you said they're all salons?
Top one salon, 316 Taché is I guess like a tanning studio. I think 782 Corridon is a salon, 784 salon. I think 125 is a salon. It's called something therapies. Maybe it's, I don't know, I'm not sure. And then 1853, I believe that's a salon. And then also 1853A, I think they're like a full salon makeup kind of place.
782 and 784 Corridon, is that the same premise?
I have them as two different. I have one has one tenant name for 782, and then I have a different tenant name for 784.
Okay. Are any of these in strip malls?
They shouldn't be. No, these are all labeled as commercial retail stores. So they would have been attempting to compare the same building type as what we have under appeal.
Okay. Okay. And you said, I just want to confirm this, you have not inspected, so you're not aware?
I did an outside inspection where I was able to drive by during my drive-by inspections of some of the properties that were on the docket. But I wasn't able to speak to anyone or to get in contact with anyone in regards. I would like to know myself because depending on how the subject is using the basement, maybe that could be a room to sort of adjust things. But without the proper evidence, I can't make any recommendations on that.
Yeah, that was my question too. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Pontier.
Thank you, Mr. Diamond. Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Pontier, your rate comparables, do any of them include basement space?
That's a great question. I can't answer confidently. I think these are all main floor rents. So if they have, if they do have like a basement use included, that I wouldn't be able to comment on that. But that's a good question.
Okay, and looking at your photographs that you've shown on page 5.
Yep.
I don't see any basement windows in any of them. You're showing 3 sides of the building, and I don't see any windows. In your drive-by, did you see any windows that would give light to the basement units?
That's another astute observation. No, I didn't. I didn't notice any windows as well.
You've never been inside the premises. You don't know what kind of stairway or elevator or what they have to actually get downstairs.
No clue. My drive-by was early in the morning, admittedly, so I'm not really sure what hours they keep for salons. But I wasn't able to access. The salon was closed. I wasn't able to speak to anybody.
Because from the photographs and everything, it looks to me like you have a very small building, And it doesn't look like there's very usable from what I can see from the outside for sure. I've never been in there either, so I can't
Yeah.
say for sure. I've never
It's
seen
possible.
any.
It's possible.
This looks
Yep.
usable basement space though, from the photographs that you show on the outside.
Yep. No, you're right. It's possible. You know, if the information is brought to light, I have no problem making adjustments on either reducing the rental rate or removing the basement if it's not used or whatever. I mean, those are typical adjustments that we can make, but they do require some effort for evidence from the appellant to sort of bring that to our attention that we have our records incorrect.
And that's fair comment, Mr. Pontiac. So I'm not being critical.
Yep.
You know, wanted to get to the bottom of this
Yep,
and
for sure.
questions the only way you can. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I just have one question relating to the photograph at page 3 and the top of page 4. At the back of the building, there appears to be a structure or something. Do you know what that is? Or is that a structure or just an awning?
If you look at page 4 on the north facing view, you do get a little bit of light that goes underneath. I think it looks like an awning. It looks like some kind of like outdoor non-permanent awning that just gets put up seasonally. I could be wrong, but it's what it looks like to me.
Okay, thank you. That was all I had.
May I just ask one question?
Certainly.
Mr. Pontinia, I know the appellant's not here, but have you had the opportunity to review the appellant's brief that was submitted?
So the brief that was submitted wasn't so much a brief as it was, I believe, if I bring it back up, I did look at it. I didn't save it into my files. I'd have to just look in my email here if you just give me a second. When was that sent to us again? On Wednesday?
I know that was the addition. The original submission was.
Oh, I did have the original submission. Okay, I thought they didn't submit anything for this.
Yeah, no, there were
Let's see,
two attachments.
oh
and
yeah,
only one
845 brief agent. Yeah. I did take a look at this. Okay, so they had I guess they had put a appraisal is what they put. They put a single person appraisal. So they have as of April 5th, 2022. So the economic period wouldn't be valid for April 1st, 2021 time frame for economic reference period. So I would ask the board to actually not include this information in their decision. If we look on page 1, they have as of April 5th, 2022, and our economic period is as of April 1st, 2021. And if we start including post-reference, then we might as well talk about the post-reference sale as well. So since we're not doing that, let's not include anything from before April 1st, 2021.
Yep. Okay, thank you, Mr. Pontinia.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any need for a summary, Mr. Pontinia?
No, I think I did my presentation there on the subject.
Okay, then we'll conclude that matter and move on to the next matter, which is item number 5 on the docket, street address of 221 Bond Street. And once again, I note that there is no attendance from the applicant.
Okay, so I'm just opening up the brief now. If you just give me 1 second. Okay, so are we ready to go?
Yes, please.
So up next, we have file 23-71. The roll number is 1209 369 5000. The 2024 assessed value as of April 1st, 2021 was $232,000. We have this building listed as a commercial retail store. We have 2 premises associated and 2 stories on the building. We have the actual year built is 1938 and an effective year of 1960. And we do have 1,038 square feet for leasable area. So if we look on page 2, we can see the pad eye view image of the parcel. It's a thin little parcel in between 2019 219 Vaughan and 225 Vaughan. On page 3, we have the overhead view of the subject property. On page 4, we do have the south-facing view and the west-facing view of the subject property. Admittedly, a little difficult to see with the characteristics of the parcel. And then on page 5, we do have the 2019 Google Street View images of the subject property. So we can see that it's used as a, I guess, as a convenience store. We did receive some income and expense information, so we're okay there. We do have a few sales on here. We can get into them if you want to speak to them later. But the oldest one we have is from 2003, and we have that for a sale price of $83,000. And then we have the most recent is from August of 2013 for $165,000. And then again, we don't have any information on the leases, as I believe that it is owner occupied. Following that, on page 7, I do have some rent comparables that I had put in. Once again, this one also was citywide just because of the difficulty in finding, once again, appropriate comparables for the subject. But I do have a few that were within the neighborhood, 413 Graham Avenue. Maybe that might be the closest, actually. But besides that, we do have the rents ranging from $15 at the lower end to about $24 at the higher end. And then on the subject itself, we do have 2 premises. Now, these are admittedly 2 smaller premises. So we have to keep in mind that there is an economies of scale that's going on with the model. When it has a smaller area, the rental rates tend to just be a little bit higher to sort of balance the overall valuation. So we do have 2. We have 720 square feet at $18.29 per square foot. And then we have 318 square feet at $16.22 per square foot, which gives us a total potential rent of $18,327. And if we divide that by 1,038, we do have an overall price of $17.66 per square foot. And then from there, if we just put it through the valuation parameters, we do have a 6% vacancy, a 3% expense, and a $7 shortfall to bring us to a net operating income of $16,274. And then from there, we have a modeled cap rate of 7% to give us to the final value of $232,000. From there, we do have the income value summary on page 9. On page 10, we do have the capitalization rates information that we provide in our briefs. On page 11, we do have the sample of the municipal assessment at excerpts. And then on page 12, and taking us to the end of our brief, is the subject's income and expense mailer. And we'll note that they do list themselves as being fully owner occupied. So we have no lease information on the subject itself. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diamond. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Padnea, the second leasable area, the 318 square feet, do you know where that is?
I don't know exactly. I think if you just give me 1 second to open my notes on here. I don't know if I saw something when I was trolling the records that we have on file. Yeah, we didn't have any notes in regards to it. I'm not aware. No, I'm not sure why it's actually split into 2. I don't know if maybe at some point in the past it was maybe operating as 2, maybe not. I'm not really sure about that, but I didn't inspect the inside, and I believe we never had any briefs submitted for this property as well. I can double check that since I kind of made that mistake last time, but 221 Vaughan. Yeah, I don't see any brief that was submitted for this subject property. So it's a good observation. I'm not sure why they are split into 2, but with that being said, if we look at it as one economic unit, we can still work with a price per square foot, and that overall price per square foot of $17.66 seems to be within a range for the subject.
Okay, so my next question is it possible that 318 square feet is in the basement and is basement space and not main floor space?
There's a possibility. Yeah, it's always possible. I mean, without a proper inspection, it's not it's difficult to know exactly what the uses of the subject. So there's always a chance. I mean, if we had more information, once again, I could work with it.
Yeah, that explanation though of why there's 2 units, if it is basement space, in fact. It would
make more sense. It would make more sense because if we actually look at if we look on my brief on page where I had the Google Street View images on page 5, I know it's a little difficult to see, but if you can kind of zoom your own eyes into the middle image, It does look like there's one entrance to the subject. I can't see where there'd be another entrance. So unless there's some back entrance to something that we're not aware of, maybe there's a chance that it could always be a small little storage or a rental premise that should be put as such, I guess.
I guess.
My notes found anything. Let me just do one more check on that. I did do a review on the premises themselves. Oh, you know what? It actually shows we have it on file as a second floor. I don't know. Does it look like there's 2 stories to the building? We maybe on the top. It looks kind of short for a 2-story, right? Yeah, we just have it as second for some reason in our records. It's showing as a second floor premise, and then it's just showing as a retail C2 average 318 square feet at approximately $16 a square foot.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay, you're welcome.
Sorry, Ms. Nesbitt.
Yes, I do have a question about your cap rate.
Yep.
Used a cap rate of 7% on this property, and I just noted that on 251 Vaughan Street, item number 7, you used 7.65.
That's
So
right.
2 different cap rates. The properties are pretty close together, I would think. Can you explain why you
Sure.
used a 7?
They're pretty close together, but what's one of the things you notice right away when you look at them? The size is completely different.
Yes,
One
it
is
is
at
small.
1,000. One is at 1,000 square feet, which has 251. You're comparing at 4,000 square feet. One has 1 premise associated. Vaughan has 4 premises associated plus basement space. And again, we have to talk about economies of scale. So when the leasable areas start to increase, the model naturally starts to increase the cap rate as well to account. We can't have a really low cap rate on a huge leasable area, or it'll give us a very high value. So there has to be a balance between the cap rate and the leasable area. There is an interplay between the two. So if you look at the model was given us, I'd have to open up my files on that, but if the model gave us what did you say, 7.65?
Yeah.
For 251? So 7.65% on a 9,000 square foot overall building, because the model puts the whole thing as 9,000 and something square feet. We're including the basement as well, right? Whereas 7% for a 1,000 square foot building, leasable area, you can see right away that when you go all the way up to 9,000 square feet, the model is accounting for it by increasing the cap rate as well.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. So does your model have size breakdowns? Like less than a certain amount?
Might have. They might have their own proprietary internal documents or information that they work with. I'm not privy to it. I don't really necessarily work with building the model per se or inputting the raw data elements that go through that is then used to calculate the valuations for the portfolio that we have. So with that being said, I can't answer exactly what, but I'm sure that there must be some scaling falling off, or if you want to call them a cliff, a leasable area cliff, where once you pass that size, the model is going to automatically adjust the cap rate. So I don't really know what those numbers would be, but we have our subject as 1,038 overall. I don't think that would be bringing it up to any sort of a cliff that I would be aware of. My understanding is that it would definitely start to increase around the 2,000 square foot, and then it starts to go up from there. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pontanilla.
You're welcome.
No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The only question I have is with respect to the land. It would appear that from the property description on your page 1, there's about 450 square feet of land attached to this building. Where is that?
So we have land value at 1,485 square feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we have there. I mean, it could be stretched out. It's rectangular in its size. It's just what we have on file.
Okay.
I know it's a thin little parcel there, but it's very long, so it couldn't account for it as well.
Okay. Thank you. That was my only question. Is there any need for a summary?
No, thank you. I think I've provided everything I had.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll conclude this matter. And I believe that is the last matter on the docket. And having heard all of the matters, this hearing is now adjourned.
All right. Thanks, everybody.